everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, back again with another news video. Check out the news video that went up earlier today for all the rest of the wrestling news. But today we're going to talk about various different stories as well as the response from various different wrestlers from WWE, AEW, past and present, regarding the ongoing US presidential election. Very interesting stuff there. So without any further ado, let's get into those headlines. First of all, as I mentioned, various prominent wrestlers have tweeted their thoughts on the US election. Next up, a WWE Superstar is said to be in line for a main roster push sometime in the future. And finally, we take a look at the reason behind the Lana announce table storyline that continues to go on every week on Monday Night Raw. So yes, various prominent wrestlers have tweeted their thoughts about the ongoing US presidential election. A lot of big names among them. So we're just going to dive in and take a look at a few and see what's being said out there. First of all, we go to Chris Jericho, of course, the most prominent person in AEW in terms of, fame, one of the biggest wrestlers out there today, who said, "I'm not a political person, but is it strange to anybody else that for the first time ever we have to wait a day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days to find out who won the presidential race?" Now there, Jericho seems to be kind of implicitly siding with Donald Trump's rather bold claims, I should say, that mail-in votes are subjected to, or can be, fraudulent and may result in an incorrect result of the presidential election. Obviously, Jericho, even though he's saying he's not a political person, has reportedly donated to the Trump campaign, so I think we need to take those comments with a bit of a pinch of salt. But Jericho there, not openly siding with Donald Trump, but just kind of implicitly saying, well, it's a bit strange that we've got to wait for these mail-in votes to come in, when obviously, as we've heard from various different sources, mail-in votes are more likely to be of the Democratic persuasion than the Republican persuasion on the whole. This prompted a response from a lot of people online, but one of them was a current wrestler in NXT, Bronson Reed, who tweeted, "Why to jump to conclusions?" A play on Jericho's Y2J nickname there, of course. A very cunning piece of wordplay that you might have not realised before I read that out there. But in all seriousness, yeah, Bronson Reed there taking an opposing standpoint to Chris Jericho regarding the election. Another very outspoken anti-Trump tweeter was Kevin Nash, who tweeted, "So sad Trump actually seeing this election slipping away, called a hold on mail-in ballots," which Trump did. He said, well, we need to stop the election. Now I've basically won everybody, when, realistically there are still votes to be counted. Running to his hand-picked Supreme Court, easy Adolf, oh my word. Let the process take place. You let COVID run its course. Let the democratic system run its course. So once again, another wrestler there who seems to be on the Democratic side of things, which honestly, I mean, not from Kevin Nash, who often tweets things of a quite liberal standpoint, but I'm surprised that the way the prominent wrestlers have sided seems to be more on the left than on the right, just because, stereotypically we see American wrestling as kind of a right-leaning thing, a good old-fashioned, you know what I mean? Obviously that's a massive stereotype, and one that might not even be applicable in today's, society. It's also interesting when we see, wrestlers from under the WWE umbrella, and of course we know the history of the McMahons and Donald Trump, tweeting in support of, more left-leaning opinions, whereas we see Chris Jericho in AEW, which compared to WWE is more left-leaning, certainly, with its attitude towards various things, tweeting out in support of Donald Trump. So it goes to show that no matter who you work for, everybody's got their own individual opinions, and certainly in the case of pro wrestlers, they're not afraid to share them online. Mick Foley also tweeted a lot in the build-up to the polls closing, and then afterwards as well. He seemed quite despondent because this was at a time last night when it appeared that Donald Trump was going to once again win the presidential election, whereas now obviously it's far less clear, it's a lot more tight as we wait for those mail-in votes to come in. But Foley tweeted saying, "The big loser," thinking that Trump had won, saying, "The big loser tonight is the United States. I really thought we were better than this." He followed that up with a tweet saying, "Racism is clearly not a deal breaker for much of America." But that may be, proven to be false as we go ahead. Once again, it's all very much up in the air. And finally, just my favourite one of the lot, it doesn't even lean one way or another, it's just Nick Gage, right, who said, "I'm not allowed to vote because I'm a convicted felon with violent tendencies, so go out and vote for me. You know what to do to get that S-word done, MDK." So Nick Gage there, taking a typically uncompromising view of things. Nick Gage, did I say Nick Cage? I hope I said his name right, or he'll come and beat me up. Next up, let's get away from all that election news and just talk about wrestling, because once again, a WWE Superstar has been tipped for a big push in the future. The most recent story we reported regarding this was to do with Elias. We said, Elias, according to various news sources, is in line for a big push. That coincided with his massive pyrotechnic concert on Monday Night Raw, and then segued into this feud with Jeff Hardy, or this ongoing feud with Jeff Hardy. But now that feud seems to be leaning more towards Jeff, and I don't know if Elias really is in line for a push anymore. There could still be one coming in the future, of course. But we're not talking about Elias right now, we're talking about Raquel Gonzalez of NXT, according to WrestlingNews.co. Now, WWE recently filed a trademark for the phrase Chigona Bomb, and WrestlingNews.co were told that this was for Raquel Gonzalez, who is said to be a favourite among WWE management. We're told that WWE officials believe, we being WrestlingNews.co, not ourselves personally, we're told that WWE officials believe she will be a major player when she eventually moves up to the main roster. Now, Gonzalez has impressed on NXT. She had a good match at Halloween Havoc with Rhea Ripley, which she lost, but she's generally done a good job in her role as Dakota Kai's kind of heater, kind of a heavy, her bodyguard, or whatever you want to call it, her henchwoman, I suppose. But we don't really know, because of that, how well Raquel Gonzalez is going to cope on such a platform on her own. This seems to imply that she's in line for a big push just on her own once she moves up to the main roster. That means that WWE potentially have an eye on moving Raquel Gonzalez from NXT to Raw or SmackDown, and I wonder whether that would initially be alongside Dakota Kai and then there'd be kind of a Batista Triple H kind of split, or whether it would just be on her own. Of course, once again, it's important to take these push stories, the NXT call-ups in line for a big push, these kind of stories with a pinch of salt, because even though that might be entirely true at the moment, even though WrestlingNews.co may have absolutely nailed this, it doesn't mean that Vince isn't going to change his mind. We've seen him change his mind so rapidly on so many call-ups to Raw or SmackDown, including the likes of Ricochet, for example. You've got Shayna Baszler, of course, as well, who is kind of rebounding now as one half of the Women's Tag Team Champions, but it doesn't match up with her dominant performance in that Elimination Chamber, does it now? Yeah, Vince can often change his mind very, very fast. So I don't know if this is guaranteed or just kind of a hesitant projection towards what's going to happen to Raquel Gonzalez in the future. But we do have to take it with a pinch of salt. But then again, I hope it is true, because it would be exciting to see Raquel Gonzalez given that kind of a push, wouldn't it? She wrestles quite differently to a lot of women, really, in WWE, and I think it would be cool to see how she'd do that against some more prominent opponents on the main roster. We're going to stick with WrestlingNews.co for just a moment, because they also have talked about this recent Lana storyline. If you haven't been following Raw recently, I think for the past 6 weeks in a row, Lana has been put through the announce table by Nia Jax. Like, a lot of weeks in a row. Now, a lot of people have been suspecting that this may be some kind of weird punishment or weird, like, rib, because obviously Lana's real-life husband is Rusev, or now Miro, who moved to AEW, and this could be kind of like, well, your husband left us, you're getting put through a table every week. But WrestlingNews.co claim that this is not the actual reason. They've said that they reached out to a WWE source about Lana and were told that she will eventually get back at Nia Jax by putting her through a table. And apparently the source was adamant, and you know, that's very strong, that Vince McMahon is not holding a grudge and there is no heat on her because of her husband signing with AEW. This again is another news story that I hope is true, because it's not Lana's fault that Rusev went to AEW, and regardless of all that, there's nothing actually inherently wrong, is there, with what Rusev or Miro now did. You know, people can go where they want. So I don't think there's any reason to punish anybody because of what he's done. But we'll have to see if that comes true. What I can see happening is Lana finally gets revenge, puts Nia Jax through a table, and then, you know, someone else comes along and puts her through a table immediately afterwards. And then, you know, the whole thing continues. But that's just a prediction from me. We'll see what happens. Next up, let's talk about ratings, because this week on Monday Night Raw, and the ratings story for WWE has been a very up and down one since the lockdown began. They've had some lows. They've also had some minor recoveries as well. But it's bad news this week for Monday Night Raw. That's because Raw last night drew the lowest number of the Thunderdome era, with 1.66 million viewers and a 0.48 in the 18 to 49 demographic. Both of these numbers rank among the lowest in the show's history. The decrease came days after SmackDown had its best numbers in the 18 to 49 demographic since March. So once again, it's been a very inconsistent up and down kind of time for WWE in terms of TV ratings. The key was apparently hour 3, which was down 18% from the first hour, the biggest drop in a long time, and it led to the third hour being the least watched hour in the history of Monday Night Raw. That final hour did a 1.46 million viewer rating, which, yeah, apparently is a historic low. It's worth pointing out that Raw was going up against Monday Night Football, of course, which did a very good number, apparently. It was the New York Giants at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, two big franchises, and one with lots of storyline built into it because, of course, Tom Brady, the former quarterback of the New England Patriots, has moved to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he has a kind of a historic thing going on with the New York Giants. I don't know if you've heard, but, the Giants foiled him in 2 Super Bowls in his career. So a lot of story going on there. Tom Brady won. He came out on top, defeating the Giants, or the Buccaneers defeated the Giants, 25 points to 23. But also collectively, the NFL gave a sound whipping to WWE. And so that's it for today's news. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. Stay safe out there. Stay positive, of course. And I'll see you very soon.